everyone, I said on my Instagram I was going to do some reaction videos to the Wandavision episodes, so this is my first one of those videos. Spoiler warning, if you've not seen those already, go and watch those first and then come back here please. First of all, I just want to preface this with the fact that as much as I love the Marvel Cinematic Universe, I'm not a huge Marvel Comics fan, so hopefully this breakdown will be understandable to the more casual viewer as well as the hardcore fans. First of all, how good was it to see the Marvel intro again? It gave me all of the feels and properly set up the rest of the programme to sit within the MCU. What really surprised me about WandaVision as a whole was how funny it was, whilst also being creepy in just the right amounts. So I'm about to go full English teacher on this thing, so I apologise in advance. Straight off the bat, we see a sign that says, "Home is where you make it." And most people acknowledge that Wanda has built this pocket reality around her. But my theory is, which I'll go into in a little bit, that she built this out of her grief. The first two lines of the episode are really, really interesting. So the first one being, "My wife and her flying saucers," which is a joke about Wanda making a saucer fly across the room onto a shelf. But also is kind of an outer space theme, which may explain S.W.O.R.D's involvement as they're the extraterrestrial branch of S.H.I.E.L.D. a little bit later on. Wanda then replies with, "My husband and his indestructible head," which is a callback to obviously in Infinity War when Thanos viscerally crushes Vision's head to take the Mind Stone out of it, which kills Vision in the process. Then we meet Catherine Hahn's character, Agnes, who many people believe is short for Agatha Harkness, who in the comics is a witch who serves Mephisto. I'd be really interested to see the brooch that Agnes wears more closely, because Agatha Harkness also wears that brooch in the comics. The idea that she's a witch is also backed up by the fact that when she meets Wanda, the first thing she says is "charmed," as if she's putting Wanda under a spell. Agnes mentions pretty much straight away that her anniversary with her husband, who is mysteriously not present in these first couple of episodes, so it'd be interesting to find out a bit more about him, is June the 2nd, which my friend Hannah mentioned to me is the day of the Salem witch trials. So that would be the day, if Agnes is a witch, that she would have met the devil, who in the Marvel universe is actually called Mephisto. Agnes then agrees to help Wanda set up a wedding anniversary dinner with a magazine called Glamorous, and on the front cover of the magazine it says "The Husband Issue," which to me kind of surrounds this whole episode, setting up Wanda's relationship with her husband before anything else can happen. And then if you've spotted in episode 2, it's more about children. This is also possibly pulled through into episode 2, where they do the magic show and Wanda goes by the stage name Glamour. An old definition of this is enchantment or magic. Then we jump to Vision at work, and he's asking all of the other employees there what actually is that their company does, and he can't get a straight answer out of anybody. My theory about why this is because if this is all a universe created in Wanda's head, she wouldn't need to know what Vision's company actually did. I mean, 60s housewives never knew what their husband's companies actually did. They only knew what their husband did. So he has a really clear idea of what his job is, but because she doesn't need to know that, that gap is never really filled. This to me raises the question of, is Vision actually conscious in this world? Does he know what's going on? Because he's asking these questions, but if he's just a figment of Wanda's imagination, why would he need to know that? This is also reflected a little bit in the song that's playing in the office at the time, and then they later choose as their song, which is Yakety Yak. Vision says he doesn't understand the words, when actually that song is about somebody being told what to do and being told not to talk back. So if this is what Vision's really doing and being told what to do by Wanda, he hasn't got the power to talk back to that. And then we get the most hilarious scene where Vision's boss and his wife, Mr. and Mrs. Hart, come for dinner, and we get Paul Bettany singing "Old MacDonald Had a Farm" with a little ukulele, which is just stellar television. This scene is really funny and almost slapstick in parts, which is reflective of the Dick Van Dyke Show, which people acknowledge this episode to be based on. And it also then sets up the creepier aspects of the scene as almost a juxtaposition of the two themes. When they sit down to breakfast for dinner, Mr. Hart starts to choke, and his wife, thinking he's joking, says, stop it," and she's smiling, and then redirects her look as the choking gets worse to Wanda and says, stop it," over and over again. And nobody moves until Wanda says to Vision, "Help him." And only then can Vision help Mr. Hart stop choking, which to me says that Vision is completely powerless until Wanda tells him what to do. in this pocket reality. So the episode ends zooming away from Wanda and Vision, and we see that actually Sword have been observing this on a screen the whole time. I like to think that this is more of an observation than a production, not like the Truman Show, but more like Lauren, who starts the Free Truman campaign, and really they're trying to figure out a way to get in to break Wanda out of this reality. So obviously we then jumped straight into episode 2, and somebody mentioned that they saw the Grim Reaper helmet in the intro to episode 2, so if anybody did see that, let me know because I want to know more about that. In this episode we see a lot more of Agnes's character, in one innocent looking exchange where she talks to the postman who says, "Don't shoot, I'm just the messenger," which, if you believe like I do that Agnes is kind of a more sinister character, this whole arrangement feels a bit scary, and it also makes you wonder who he's the messenger for. Is he a messenger for Sword bringing in information from the outside, or is he more of a messenger for Mephisto? I notice you also see this same postman in the introduction to the first episode in the little Wandavision song, which by the way was amazing. But I wonder if he's the first person they see when they move into the neighbourhood. What part of this does he form? Agnes says to Wanda that another character, Dottie, is key to getting school admissions. This could be Agnes putting the idea into Wanda's head around her having children. Later on, another character says in front of Agnes, "The devil is in the detail," and Agnes then says, "That's not the only place he is," which really adds a sinister overtone and also reflects that she is most likely working for the devil. We also start to see a lot more of the other neighbours who keep repeating this phrase, "for the children," which is a little bit creepy because actually we've not seen any children yet, and none of these people seem to have children. It's possibly more of a manipulation of Wanda to try and get her to have children, but we're not sure why yet. A slight offshoot on that point, if none of these people have any children, where did the toy helicopter come from that Wanda finds in her front bushes, which has the Sword logo on it? So this could be a real helicopter that's come into this pocket reality and been transformed into something a little bit less menacing, or it could just be that Sword are trying to remind her that they are there. There are a lot of conflicting theories about where the neighbours have come from, because they do seem to be copying what Wanda is doing. So when she starts to question something, they all start to question her. My theory on this is that they're all inside of her head. However, we all know that you can't imagine a face in your brain, so it's likely that these are people she's come across before in her life. My theory is that these are people she's hurt or killed accidentally, and this is another manifestation of her grief. Wanda and Vision then take part in a magic show for the children, in which Vision goes by the stage name Illusion. Later on, Wanda asks Vision, "Is this really happening?" And he reassures her with no doubts in his mind that it is. And Wanda is, you think, referencing the fact that she is pregnant at this point, but in reality, I think what she's questioning is this whole thing around her happening? And Vision has to back her up on this because he's a creation of her mind. This end credit scene and the end credit scene from episode 1 have a lot of hexagons in them, which to me feels like a reference to hives, beehives, and the beekeeper who crawls out of the drain pipe in a very, very creepy fashion at the end of episode 2. My theory behind this is that this is all a beehive where Wanda is the queen bee and she feels like everything is down to her and she is running the show, when in reality it's the beekeeper who is in charge of everything that's going on here. One of the main reasons I think she's not really in control is if this was a world of her creation entirely, why wouldn't her brother Quicksilver be there, other than contractual issues? In both episodes we have these adverts which are both presented by the same man, that are completely separate from what's going on in that episode. The first of these adverts is for a toaster which is made by Stark Industries, and when you press the lever down it makes a repulsor sound like the Iron Man glove, and then it starts to tick, and this ticking speeds up like a time bomb almost, which calls back to Wanda's origin stories facing the bomb that said Stark Industries on the side, which never went off. The rather creepy tagline of this toaster is "Forget the past, this is your future," which for a lot of people they've been thinking this is a toaster made by Howard Stark, but to me that line suggests that this is more about Tony Stark and the future of the Avengers after he's gone. The second advert is for a watch made by Strucker, who is actually the Hydra scientist who experimented on Wanda, which gave her her powers. The tagline for the watch is "He'll make time for you," which part of me initially thought was because Strucker had made time for the Maximoff twins to experiment on them and get them to the place where they are now. But now part of me thinks this is more about the time stone, or that Wanda made a deal with Mephisto and he gave her a time frame where she could exist with Vision in peace. I think it's really interesting that the adverts are in that order. It's almost going through her life story, and I'll be interested to see what the third advert is after, you know, the Stark origins, the Strucker moment, when she gets her powers. What comes next? It could be something to do with Ultron. I have two theories about the man who's presenting these adverts. The first is that he's Mephisto, which is Marvel's devil, and he's trying to remind her of all of the awful things that have happened in her life, all the awful things that she's done to other people because she is this mutant. And the second is that he might be a sword agent who is breaking into this pocket reality to try and remind Wanda of what is actually going on in the outside world and who she really is. There's then that second set of end credits with the red blocks flying around and forming different shapes, like the rings that are interlocking and the rose, which, then this is a bit of a comic nerd moment, reflects the Wanda Maximoff cover of the House of M. The wine in episode 1 is also called Maison de Mépris, which translates to House of Misery, which maybe could be House of M. This is important for 3 reasons, because in that series of comics, Wanda is actually being controlled, and that would make a lot more sense with why at certain points she doesn't really know what's going on around her. Reason number 2 is that she is being controlled in those comics by Mephisto, which really backs up that we are going to see him in this series. And the third reason is because Mephisto in the comics needs Wanda to have children so he can use them to take her magic away from her. And this is why all of the neighbours were pressuring Wanda to have children, and Wanda felt the need to have children. Not because everybody around her did, but because they were needed for some other purpose. So that's all my theories for this week's wrap-up. I didn't want to duplicate everything that you'll have already seen on Twitter or some of the other wrap-ups that you'll have seen, some of the great breakdowns that are out on YouTube at the minute. But thank you for watching. Let me know what you think. Let me know if you have other theories, and then I can maybe explore those a bit more in later episodes.